And now we have even more exciting things going on. You probably all already know Will Schwalbe and Rufi Thorpe because this is so exciting. But in case you don't, Will is the former editor-in-chief of Hyperion. He founded Cookster, which is acquired by Macmillan, where he's worked for a long time. He's the author of 4 books, including Send, The End of Your Life Book Club, Books for Living, and Now We Should Not Be Friends. Congratulations. Beautiful and so good.
Yay, Will.
And also we have Rufi Thorpe here as well. Also 4 novels, so 8 between them. The Girls from Corona Del Mar, Dear Fang with Love, The Knockout Queen, and in June, Margot's Got Money Trouble. So I'm very excited for that. So here we go. Is that a beat? Okay. Here, come on in. We'll do it with you, Money. Yeah. Okay. Well, perfect timing. Come on up. I lost that. Great. Okay. So our second award. How are you doing, Zibby?
I'm good.
Okay. Here, I'm going to read why you're so special. Do you know why you're special?
Yeah, there are many ways, I think.
So number 1 is confidence. Great. So Steve is at the School for the Visual Arts and Humanities, involved in athletics at school, tennis, and cross country, and other organizations like the Chess Club, Muslim Student Association Club Vice President, has received tons of awards from his school for his academic accomplishments, and now is the recipient of this Yale Club of Los Angeles. Congratulations.
Thanks. Do you have to say anything?
Sure.
All right, so getting this award, I don't think it was in an easy pace. I have to go on a lot of struggle, lots of competition, and the best 4 things that I tried to maintain while keeping to succeed in my high school was to be a critical thinker, was to be a collaborative leader, to be a creative innovator, and to distinctly have a effective communication.
Wow.
Yeah, so by having these 4 basics, I tried myself to go in a pace in order to meet in the standards that each student should achieve and should meet in order to strive forward. Yeah.
That sounds good. Everybody needs to work on their 4 main tenets of life. And then we will catch up to a piece here. Anyway, congratulations.
Yeah.
Can you get your flowers in your bag?
Okay, stand together.
Okay, here, stand right here. We'll take a quick picture.
Great. Perfect, thank you.
Okay. All right, and now on with the show. And if anybody wants these seats, come sit in the front if you want. No? Okay.
We won't fight. Well, I'm so excited that I get to do this event with you. And I feel like before we get into it, I just wanted to explain how I came to be the one lucky enough to be asking you about this gorgeous book, which is, I feel like you have this genius for friendship. And you can see it that all of you are here in this space because Will has this ability to forge connections with people that are genuine, and that is what happened to me, is that I came within your orbit just because of the Knockout Queen, and I went on your podcast, and it was during COVID, so nothing was professional about it. I had built a little fortress of pillows in my bed, and I was inside trying to record good sound quality, and it was magical.
So, well, thank you, Rufi. I'm so thrilled to see everybody here. And there are a couple of seats here if someone gets tired of standing, but I sometimes like to stand, so I get that. I wanted to say a little bit about my friendship with Rufi, because this is, in fact, the first time that Rufi and I have ever met in person. And our friendship started when I was having lunch with her then literary agent, who is a formidable character. And she pushed a bound galley, which, as you know, is an advanced reading copy of a book, across the table at me after lunch. And she said, I love this book. I will give this book to you, but only if you read it. And if you do not read it, I'm going to come and I'm going to take it back. So I said, I'll read it. And actually, she had done this to me only once before, and it was a book called The Tale for the Time Being by Rufi,
Oh, it's such a
which
good book.
became one of my favorite all-time books. And so I just fell head over heels in love with The Knockout Queen. I cannot say enough marvelous things about this novel. I saw myself in it, and had Rufi on the podcast just before I shut the podcast down because I found the pillow fort thing challenging. And it was just, we got on like a house on fire, and then we started emailing each other sporadically, and I felt it was a kind of emotional mind meld. So it's really special for me to be here. And I'm going to slightly hijack things, if that's okay.
Oh, please.
Which is first to thank Zibby. Where's Zibby at? There's Zibby, for hosting us in your wonderful store, for all you do in support of literature, and to congratulate you on Blank, your novel, which is just out, and Zibby is on an epic tour promoting. I also wanted to say something about Bink, which is a cause near and dear to our heart, which is a not-for-profit that supports independent booksellers, both stores and individuals. And I just wanted to thank you all for coming to this independent bookstore, but also just for promoting and patronizing independent bookstores in general. They are such an important cultural resource, and your being here is really huge. Granted, I told some of you that you had to be here, so there is that. But I will shamelessly say that even if you have bought our books in another format or own several copies, buying more copies of them here today is what makes events and indie bookstore life possible. And then finally, before I stop hijacking the conversation, I'm really moved to see lots of people I don't know, as well as friends from all parts of my life. My oldest friend is here. I've known since I was 4 years old. I have friends from St. Paul's and Yale here, and thank those communities for gathering everybody up. But a very special person is Pippa, who was my mother's dearest friend in the world. And so I feel, thanks to Pippa, that my mom is in the room. So.
You can hijack away. I was wondering if you could set up for us a little bit how you and Maxie first met and who you were and who he was that you would think that we should not be friends.
So I'm going to have to ask you to cast your mind back to 1983. Those of you who can cast your mind back, have to do a leap of imagination. And I had just returned from a term abroad, meaning I was in Los Angeles, which was a very foreign country to me, and had worked in the television business. And in fact, several of my other friends from that fateful year are here represented. And it was a really transformative experience for me. And so I came back to Yale transformed. And I had gone this sort of preppy looking little kid, and I came back with a turquoise acid washed blue jean jacket with an armband that was made of leather and had studs on it, and with my hair shaved tight on the sides and permed down the middle, because I had given my hairdresser a picture of the artist who was still then known as Prince, and said, I want to look like that. Needless to say, I looked absolutely nothing like Prince. And I had also had a very moving and life-changing experience, because it was just at the start of the AIDS epidemic. And there were people that I had known who had grown ill and died from a mysterious new disease that I had started to suspect was probably AIDS. We didn't even have a name for AIDS then. It was actually called GRID, gay-related infectious disease. So I came back to Yale, and I had a little bit of trouble. I'm trying to think how I really fit in. I had grown up, and my life was transformed yet again one day by a knock on the door, and it was a friend from St. Paul's, a year older than me, who basically set in motion a series of events that would result in me being invited to join a secret society. And this was a secret society at Yale that had a very unusual mission. And that was to bring together the 15 most different kids at Yale. It admitted women the day Yale admitted women. It had this variety of kids, and none of us had ever seen one another or talked to one another. There was one exception to that, but by and large. And I remember agreeing to join. We had to have dinner there twice a week, senior year, could never miss. We had to give what was called an audit, where we told our entire life story and go on a weekend retreat. And my first time in the hall, as we called it, I saw the other kids and I thought, I could be friends with these kids. Like, these are people I could get to know, except for one kid. And there was one kid who was so loud and so obnoxious. He was a legendary jock. He had won the state track championship at 10 o'clock one morning, and he had won the state lacrosse championship at 3 o'clock that same afternoon, state of Pennsylvania. His arms were so big, he had to cut a V in his Lacoste shirts just to get them through them. And he was bouncing around the hall, as we called it. He was like the kind of kid, think fast, and then he'd throw a beer at your head. And he gave everybody nicknames. And I just thought, I can't with this kid. I just can't. So I'm going to avoid him. And so his name was Maxie, Chris Maxie. Everybody calls him Maxie. He was on his way to become a Navy SEAL. He served for 6 years as an officer in the Navy SEALs. He would go on to found an extraordinary school called the Island School on the island of Eleuthera in the Bahamas. And little did I know that he would become a friend, and that I really can't imagine at this point in my life without the friendship of Chris Maxey. So this is the story of those 40 years.
You are so good at lovingly making fun of yourself at that age. What was it like excavating your youth in this way? Like, was it like to get into co-remember with somebody like that feels like such a gift? Did you guys have the same memories of those years? Because when you guys kind of you would co-remember this stuff together, and a lot of like when you're direct quoting, you're trying to like piece together what did we actually say to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So what, I don't know, were his memories of you different than your memories, or what was it like revisiting such a formative time?
It was really fun. I lived to a sort of bizarre degree in my head in the past. And I love that. As far as making fun of myself, I have so many friends who are happy to do that with me. That comes very easily. But it was astonishing the extent to which our memories aligned. That my process with this friend Maxie would be, I would remember as much about a time we were together as I possibly could. I would then share that with him. And then I would say, was that how you remember it? Because I remember this. If there was a third or fourth person present, I would then, once I'd written it, show them what I'd written and say, you were there. Is this what you remember? So I try to approach memoir as reporting, as nonfiction. But quite late in the game, I had an incredible gift, which was, I'd said to Maxie, do you have any photos of our senior year? And he was looking around in the trunk,
Was this the journal?
And he said, I have a journal. He said, I completely forgot I had a journal, and he just gave me the journal. And he said, and there was our entire senior year. He had written down everything.
Was there any, it must just be, I mean, it's almost horrifying to read one's own journal. Was his journal what you would have expected the Maxie then to be thinking about, and you know what I mean, his vision of the world?
It was the journal got to the heart of why I wanted to do this book and why I'm so glad I did. Because part of my intent of this book is it's undoubtedly true, and Maxie will be the first to tell you this, that he was a little bit prejudiced against me when we met. I don't think he'd ever known an openly gay person before. In fact, I'm sure he hadn't. But I was way, way, way more prejudiced against him. And I made a lot of assumptions about who he was based on the fact that he was a jock who threw beers at people's heads. When I read his journal, he was so thoughtful and so bound up into knots about how to be a good son and how not to disappoint people and what was he going to do with his life and about he had a longtime girlfriend and their ups and downs, and he kept the journal because he wanted to be a good guy, and that's where he held himself to account. So I had him totally wrong. I mean, it didn't take me 40 years to discover that, but it took me longer than it should have.
Well, one of my favorite, I mean, there's sort of a thrill of like being let into a secret society at Yale, like the vicarious like fun of reading the book is partially that, but I love the audits and those scenes. Like I love your telling of your own audit, but then also of his audit. What was that like? Was his audit, and also I just feel like we should describe in more detail, like what the audits are. You could only ask questions, and like what was the general, because I feel like there's something so profoundly hopeful. Like the idea is that this club is going to change your life profoundly, and it's going to do that by you listen to the details of these people's lives without judgment, and you see them, and that you can be transformed just by truly seeing other people. I mean, it's almost like the project of literature in itself was the impetus behind this club. And so maybe just, can you give people more of a sense of like what the audits were like? There's a lot of drinking too. It's a miracle that any of you can remember what
I know. So, and I love, by the way, before I describe what the audits are like, because you'll now see what I'm saying, it is connected with literature. And when I read an extraordinary novel like one of yours, it is telling me the story of people. And I do believe reading fiction and memoirs in particular expands our capacity for empathy. And I believe, and I don't think anyone's going to contradict me here, that readers are not exclusively, but often kinder, more open people.
Well, no, we're all better off to see each other as we really are than as we assume each other are.
And I know a lot of extraordinary people who are not readers at all, so I'm not dissing them. But it is something to, especially reading at random.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was, to go back to what an audit was, each of the 15 of us in turn, in the fall semester of the senior year, had to tell our life story to the other kids. And the life stories that you told, some of the shorter ones were 3 hours, and some of the longer ones were 7 hours. Mm-hmm. And they gave us really strict rules. So the rules were that you would listen until the person had completely finished. They could talk as long as they want and say whatever they wanted. You could ask a question at the end, as many questions as you like, but only questions of genuine curiosity. You couldn't offer up anything else analogous from your life. You had to just ask them questions about theirs. And you couldn't ask why questions. Because the thought was, why implies that you're questioning someone's motives. why did you do this or why did you do that? And these 14 other kids shared astonishing stories, and everyone surprised me. And people were honest and vulnerable, and we knew we were telling each other things that if we told people outside of the hall, we could, in many cases, ruin one another. But these were deep, painful, emotional intimacies and truths, but no one ever breathed a word of anybody's story. And I do repeat some things about people's story in this book, and in each case, I called them and said, even 40 years later, and even not identifying whose story it is, can I say this? And Maxie told the story about his life, which included the fact that his biological father had died when he was a toddler, had been a military officer, had died of a brain tumor. He told me about his mother had thought of ending her life, but decided to go on for the sake of this little boy. And the step family they found, and the father who adopted him in the time that his younger brother got his hand caught in the drain of a pool and actually died before being brought back to life. And you cannot see this person that you have labeled as the insensitive, obnoxious, boorish jock the same way after they've just spent 5 hours telling you the deepest intimacies of their life. And we all did that. And I mean, something that I think is really astonishing about the secret society, there were 15 of us in it to start. One kid decided not to return to school. So 14. One kid, and this is talked about in the book, was killed in an accident when we were in our 30s. But of the others, 11 and I are in touch. And of that 11, all 11 have come to at least one book event during this tour, which is pretty astonishing when you think about it. And I do believe that in this incredibly divided world, sharing our stories and being vulnerable with each other is, it's not the kumbaya, but it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, because you point out in the book too that there would be points, especially early on in the mandatory weekly dinners, where it was really like not fun, and two other people would just constantly argue, and it was annoying, and that if it wasn't mandatory, you guys probably would have all stopped having dinner together. But the fact that it was mandatory, you have to keep returning. And it reminded me really honestly of my high school Russian teacher who was like, you Americans, you always expect to like your friends. Are just people you can't get rid of, but there's something like you guys couldn't get rid of each other. And then that's like the bounding of like this really profound and beautiful intimacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't get rid of each other. And you can be real if the people have to see you next week anyways.
Yeah.
I think especially when you're college age, you're really worried about fitting in and saying the wrong thing and people not liking you, not wanting to see you. But like these kids, they can see them 3 days after that, and 3 days after that.
How do you go about telling the secrets of a secret society? Like, did you have to get that checked out by anyone, or?
Well, I don't name the secret society,
Yeah.
even though people can figure it out. We had some fun rituals that I don't talk about.
Okay.
But I did in the end send it to the current board of trustees of the secret society and say, hope you guys are okay with this. But before it was published.
Yeah.
And they loved it. They completely embraced it.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, it seems very much in the spirit of the group anyway, so
Yeah.
that doesn't surprise me. How did you decide to write it as a book and the story of your friendship, and like where did the seed, because it's obvious that why the friendship wound up having such a profound impact on your life, but when did you start to think I want to write this as a book?
So it had a sort of strange evolution, which was Maxie, as I said, I totally misjudged him, and he's a really good writer. And I kept encouraging him to write something now that he had founded this remarkable school in Yale, Lutheran. And
Maybe we should talk about the island first, because you have to that's like maybe my other favorite part about the book is getting to go vicariously to the island school. I'm like in love with it. So maybe just describe a little bit for people how he came to found it and what it is.
So has anyone heard of the island school? Oh. Okay. It was based on I think it's called the Mountain School in Vermont, and the idea of experiential learning, and it's giving high school kids a term abroad. Maxie and his wife Pam founded it 25 years ago. After the Navy SEALs, he became a high school teacher and a science teacher and coach, and he started taking kids on trips to show them the ocean and try to give them the love he had for the ocean. And over time, they founded this extraordinary school, which you get term abroad credit. And it's a really spiritual place with some important lessons for all of us. One of the things about it is when you arrive as a kid at the island school, they greet you at the airport, welcome you, and take away your phone. And you do not see your phone for 100 days. And they build up to this idea of sending you on kayak trips and helping you be alone outside with your thoughts and self. But they also put you to work as scientists doing real research, helping in the community, and it changes kids' lives. They just come back changed, really changed. And he also, inspired by the secret society, he breaks up friend groups and he social engineers groups of kids who wouldn't think they would like each other. And it's hysterical too, because every term, there's a whole bunch of kids who look at this former Navy SEAL and make all the assumptions that I made, and he loves to prove them wrong. So it's a magical place. So I told him I really wanted him to do a book. I had such a stupid title for it, which he hated. The Warrior and the Sea. And because he hates the word warrior. But writing about how we went from blowing up reefs to saving them and teaching kids about our world. And he just couldn't get around to it. And eventually he said to me, do you know anyone who could help me write this book? And I thought about it, and I was like, I want to help you write it. And then I thought, I want to write a biography of you, because I so admire Maxie, and he's such an unusual character. And I wrote a proposal and sent it to my extraordinary publisher, a guy named Sunny Mehta, who is perhaps the greatest publisher like Mono.
Yeah.
And he didn't bite, he just wasn't interested. And he took me to lunch with an editor who worked with a brilliant editor named Dan Frank. And at the end of the lunch, after an extremely long pause that Sunny was known for, he said, I think the book you want to write is about your friendship. And I said, you're absolutely right. So I called Maxie and I said, can I write a book about our friendship? And he said, of course. So, and then Maxie gave me carte blanche, journal, all our recollections, everything. He just said, write the book you want. But at the end of it, I sent it to him and I said, here's the book and I want you to read it. I want your wife to read it. I want your 4 kids to read it. I'll change anything you want changed. And if you don't want to go ahead with this book, I will give the money back and we'll just call it a day. As I said, our friendship is more important than any book. And he read it and he said, I don't change a word except one request. He said, I know we drank a lot, but I am the head of a school, and can you take out some of the drinking? So I took out fully half the drinking.
Oh my gosh.
I know, and people are like, yeah, half gone. So that was everything else. His divorce and everything that went on with that. It's all in there. Pam, his wife, shared her life. Can I quickly tell the divorce story? It's my favorite story.
Please do.
So Pam had a very painful divorce from, Max had a very painful divorce from Pam, the woman he founded the school with. And he did something remarkable in the divorce, which is he kept interviewing divorce attorneys, and they kept saying, tell us about your soon-to-be ex-wife. Was she seeing other guys? Did she do drugs? And he's like, whoa, you're talking about the mother of the kids, and the woman I love. I'm not doing that. So he walked into court without a lawyer, and he said, give her whatever she wants. She deserves all that and more. And it was the marriage was falling apart just because he had devoted so much time to the school. And a couple of years later, he called me and said, I have great news. Can you meet me for drinks? Of course. And he said, I've just proposed to a woman and she's agreed to marry me. And I said, I'm so happy for you, Maxie. do your kids like her? And he said, they love her. She's their mom. And I remember thinking, oh my God, Pam wasn't their mom? No way. And then I'm like, oh, you're marrying Pam. So he remarried Pam. And we're very happy. We've all been on tour together.
So magical, so special. Okay, what do you think? Do you feel like you have learned? I mean, I feel like you have this special genius for friendship, and also like, I feel like friendship is, for me artistically, I like to write friendships. You know this about me because they're not for anything. You don't. You know, I mean, in lots of ways, like having a domestic partner is like a little business partnership, but it's with your life, you know, and you rely on each other for sex and for, you know, comfort and all these other things. Whereas friendship is always sort of extracurricular. Like it's, it's always, you're not as obligated to each other and you can show up and you manage to like be in each other's lives. And I guess do you feel like friendship has played an especially important role in your life generally, and how has your vision of friendship changed? And like, do you think that doing these audits changed your vision of friendship? And did writing the book change your vision of friendship?
I think the audits expanded my vision of who could be my friend. And writing the book and traveling around and talking about it confirmed that. And I don't believe that we can be friends with anyone, but I think we can be friends with far more people than we might think. And it's a matter of finding people who share our values, even if they come from a vastly different life experience or even hold vastly different opinions. But the friendship for me has always been chosen family. And actually, I had a great model in my parents who friends were such an important part of their life. And our lives included all of these friends of all different generations, which is, I think, a really important thing. I was talking the other night, I was joking the fact that, in fact, one of the great things about having family friends is everybody's on their best behavior when the family friends are over. For me also, you know, unless somebody does something egregious, friendship is for life. Like you are. And I also think too that one of the beautiful things about a really strong friendship, like the ones that I write about in this book, is that you can go a decade without seeing each other and pick up right where you left off if the groundwork is there. Connection there. Yeah. So especially getting to the stage in my life, the back nine, as my golf friends and fans like to call it, I can't really think of anything more important than friendship.
I know that we're supposed to open it up and let people ask questions, but are you writing anything new right now?
That's always that's what David, my husband, is like, are you getting to work on something? I think he's heard enough about this one. I'm just about to start, and I'm at that kind of.
Is it like feels ticklish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now.
Well, I won't make you say what it is. But...
Yeah. Will you tell people about your new book and when it comes out?
Oh, sure, but.
Please.
Okay, I have a new novel coming out in June called Margot's Got Money Troubles, about a girl who is a community college student, has an affair with a professor, and gets knocked up and decides to keep the baby, and then supports herself with an OnlyFans account. So.
And I will say the buzz on this book is off the charts. It is really. It's going to be.
It is also very much a book about people not turning out to be who you expect them to be, and about like the assumptions and judgments that we make about other people, and there's also a lot of professional wrestling in the book. So.
And I will be very disappointed if all the copies of The Knockout Queen aren't sold out today, because it's really one of the best books I've read in the last ever. It's one of the next books. And it's about this extraordinary friendship. It's a book about friendship.
You know, friendship it's this sort of like pure form of love.
Mm.
You know, where you just like are seeing another person and loving them, but you're not like, and now you have to show up, and or you have to split the rent, or you have to,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Before I get that, did the Knockout Queen start with the friendship? Where did it start?
No, you know, it started with my main character. I kept trying to write it just from her point of view, but she had no sense of irony, and so she just couldn't understand any of the terrible things that were happening to her. She was just experiencing it as pain. So I knew I needed someone else. I needed like a vocalizer character, and so no. Then I was like, what if she has a neighbor? But it again is like an unlikely friendship, like two people who wouldn't think that they could be friends, finding that they had a lot in common.
Yeah, I just love it. You're all in for a treat.
But I also just feel like there's something, part of the, what did you call it? I don't play golf.
Back nine.
The back nine that is magical is suddenly seeing the front part of your life and the way that it set all the dominoes in motion, you know, and like seeing the architecture of the choices that you made and who you were then and who you are now. And just even, it's such a gift getting to see in the book. I mean, when I say you're so good at making fun of yourself, you do it in this like loving way. Like you've really accepted the creature that you are, and you've accepted the creature that he was, and you've accepted each other. And it's like through friendship, I feel like friendship is also a way of teaching yourself self-love and self-acceptance.
Mm.
I don't know. At
It's
least.
lovely. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I like, yeah.
Okay. Do we want to open it up to questions from other people?
I'm delighted. I think this is wonderful.
Thank you.
Were any of your other friends offended that you didn't write about them? I was.
Not yet.
Nice to see you. Beth is another friend from the famous year. I actually think maybe a little bit. But what I said, which is true, is Maxie is not one of my best friends. I have a tight coterie of people who really are. I could not have written this book about someone I actually knew better than I know Maxie. There would have been too much. This was self-limiting. So, yes. But good question. It's a little bit.
Should we assume when we read everything about Max and it's not drinking, he was drinking?
It's just, you know, when people go to their doctors and the doctors ask you how many drinks a week and you say 2, they double it. They like write on the chart 4.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so just double the drinking, but only when I said we were.
Okay, got it.
I was wondering why they limit the society to just 15 people, because it seems like such a really great way to bring, like you say, diverse people together so we can like not have such a divided country and have it sort of more widespread, not just at Yale, at like other campuses and other places where we could bring people together.
Yeah, I mean, there's something, I was talking to someone the other day about 15, and they were curious about that number, but they had just come from a jury, and they were talking about 12. And there is something about groups of 12 to 15 that can be intimate in a way that just a slightly larger group can't. Another thing about this secret society is it's, thank goodness, very well off. So every bite of food we had was paid for. We had an unlimited account at the liquor store, all free. And what that meant was that we could take in kids regardless of their economics. It was never a choice for a kid, can I afford this? And that also limits the numbers. But I hope we can replicate this in different ways. But there's something special about the number 15. And some people have asked, each group when they go out has to choose unanimously the next 15 kids.
Wow. Was there anything
challenging about that group of 15 that has informed you throughout your life? Anything surprising you found? You know, you keep going back to it, other than not maybe judging a book by its cover.
I mean, it's fascinating. I don't know if you go back to high school or college reunions. Our friend Miranda. It's fascinating sociologically to see what becomes of people, and how the essential doesn't change. I think I got to know everybody, but people's life paths are fascinating. And one of the key sort of other characters in this is a guy who's named in the book, David Kelly. By the way, everybody's name is real because I asked them and they said sure. And he was kind of seemed like a sort of conservative kid, and he became a banker and then worked in finance in the music industry. And in recent years, he's now Mr. Palm Springs Gay Leather. He won the championship, and his husband is the former provost of Oberlin. And he just is surprising in a million different ways, but he's the same kid. So what I learned too is that the essential doesn't change, but people can surprise you still, even 40 years later.
I know there are a lot of St. Paul's people in the audience. Do you feel like you didn't meet different people there versus when you got to Yale, or what was the difference in sort of how you made friends in high school versus college?
So, I mean, someone said, while being critical of the book, they said to me, "Oh, come on, how different were you and Maxie really? You're like these preppy kids. You went to St. Paul's. He went to, prep school in Pennsylvania. You had, came from well-off families, very comfortable, etc." And what I said was, whether it's St. Paul's School or the most homogenous public high school anywhere in the country, the kids divide up. And you can still walk, I think, into any ninth grade lunchroom, and the druggies are at this table, the jocks are at that table, the theater kids are at this table. And so I knew a lot of different kinds of kids because St. Paul's actually has a pretty relative at the time diverse community of kids. Not relative to any sort of real world thing, but for a school like that at the time. And I knew kids and I was friendly with them, but we'd never connected deeply in the way that this forced us to. So I said hello to them and I knew them and I liked them, but I didn't know them.
I'll put you on the spot a little bit, ask you to project some wax poetic a bit. We fought a lot of battles in the early 80s around openness and being who we were and connecting with each other. It was a time of transition, I think, particularly given the politics of the time. When you look at what's going on our campus today, kind of 40 years later, which we're going back to for our 40th, you see some of that turmoil, some of that pushback on openness and free speech and connection. What do you see different about the times, and what would that friendship be like today versus 40 years ago?
I don't want to lay everything at the feet of this, but I think I can describe the change in 2 words, and it's social media. And I think to ask young people to find out who they are and to play out who they want to become, and to allow them to say stupid, intolerant things sometimes and take it back the next day, was possible pre-social media in a way that is just so much more challenging now. So I think it's impossible, sadly, to judge a social media world by the standards that we had. What do you think, Rufi?
I mean, I think that that's very astute, although it's hard to tell how it's changing. Like my sons are still very young, but they're so afraid of posting anything because it all seems so permanent and so exposing. And so I feel like there's almost like a return to wanting to keep a very low profile because people are afraid of kind of exposing themselves. Whereas I think that they're always appalled. They're like, "You're gonna post a picture of your lunch?" They're like, why do you need to share that with anybody? And I'm like, I don't know.
I want to see your lunch. I'm interested.
Is the group still picking 15 students every year?
It's still picking 15 students. Every now
So
and
it
then.
is going on in spite
Oh.
of social media.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. So, yeah, the group is incredibly, incredibly strong. But I think that's the secrecy of it. The fact that you're not allowed to share anything that goes on in the hall without permission of the other kids is what allows kids to be real. And the fact that, kids can't cancel you because they got to see you 2 days later. Like,
Right.
they have to keep seeing each other. So you can say stupid, intolerant things that you later take back. And one of the pivotal moments in the book, spoiler alert, is that there's one point early in our friendship where I've shared my heart with Maxie, and he's drunk and around as was I, around a pool table, and he says some homophobic slur repeatedly. And I'm thinking, I'm really, really upset. Did he not hear me? Did he not see me? Does he not get who I am? And I got over it. But when I, 40 years later, saw his journal, on that night, he tells the story. It was 2:00 in the morning, and he was beating himself up. He said, "I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said that. I'm so mad at myself." And I just think it would have been so easy to say, "Okay, I'm done with that kid." Like, I told him who I was, and he still said this stupid thing, and I'm never going to see him again. And God forbid he had done it on social media, but because of the way this was set up, I realized that wasn't who he was. He just said something stupid.
Now, were you concerned about showing the book to the trustees and also have, members of your delegation or, younger people? What are the trustees of the organization like? Just curious comparing it with another organization I know well.
They're just sort of people older and younger than I am who went there, who love the place, and they had no problem objection whatsoever. And the younger people who've seen it really seem to appreciate it. The fact that I think they felt the benefits of sharing this experience outweighed any danger of holding it up to light. And I was worried that the other kids in my delegation that somebody would say, "Please don't use my real name," but nobody did. So, but I'm very, very careful. In all of the books I've written, if there's a story about you in my book, I'm going to send it to you, and I'm going to ask you, is it true or not true? And if you say it is true, I'm going to say, do you want your name in it or not? Because I really believe people own their stories, and I think a lot of writers, actually under the guise of sort of art, take a lot of advantage and take people's stories. They're not yours to take.
Well,
That's
there's
just how
also frivolous lawsuits.
It's much less that. It's just that I just feel like people's stories are theirs. There was in the book I wrote about my mom, there was a wonderful story about a kid she adored who now calls her mom, who she met in Liberia. And I found him and said, "John, are we okay with this? Can I tell the story?" Because I feel like that's his.
Well, before we go to both of you signing your books, barring 5 to 7 hours of time to really get to know people, what is your advice to help everybody not make snap judgments about others? How can we get to know people in the fast pace of our day-to-day world to make the kind of connections that you've formed?
This is almost that you asked my favorite questions, Zibby.
Yes.
So I love that this is what I will leave you with, is I have a crusade, which is to get people to ask one another, what are you reading? And no matter where you meet somebody, no matter when you meet them, in line, waiting at the deli, or at Layla's Bagels, which are off the chart amazing. And if you haven't been there, you have to go there because there's a wonderful line. Just to say, what are you reading? Because I think sometimes we make judgments. Oh, that person may not be reading anything. And we find out that, sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't read anymore," or I'm not much of a reader. And you can talk about something else. But it's astonishing how often somebody is a reader and wants to tell you the book. And I think the beauty of meeting when you talk about a book is that everybody has their opinion. You're both readers, you're both on the same page, and you can, if it's something you've read, you share something. If it's not, oh, tell me about it. My crusade is, what are you reading? And to get everybody to ask that of one another all the time, even, and this is a very controversial statement, even when you're on a plane and the next person looks like they don't want to talk to you. What's your thought, Rufi? Are you
I mean, I love this idea. I also just found, I thought that the insight to not ask why questions that are really like veiled judgment or questioning somebody else's judgment, and that like that rule, I just thought, well, that's a really smart rule for asking questions of people who just divulged anything to you. You know, to be curious, but to like understand that judgment isn't really yours to give. Like that's not the trade-off right now, you know, and to just like ask questions and remain curious. That's my takeaway from the book.
And can I just say, what are you reading?
Oh, what am I reading? I'm so bad. What are you reading?
I'm actually reading a little slender Edith Wharton novella called Gummer Sisters. It's like way out of print, but it's cool.
That sounds extremely
It's about
cool.
two women who run a little haberdashery shop. It's cool.
Oh, haberdashery.
Yeah.
I like haberdashery.
Yeah.
It's way interesting. I'm reading a bunch of novels that I'm excited about a novel called Oye. Have you read it? By Melissa Mongoyan?
Mm.
And it's coming out in May. And it's really voicey and gossipy and everything. And it's like the drama of family and like the conceit of it is that it is sort of like a transcription of this like unending kind of phone call.
Wow.
And so it's like super voicey and fun.
Cool. That sounds really good. And next, I'm also going to read Blank, which I haven't read yet, but I'm super excited. But that sounds really awesome.
Thank you so much, G, for coming. Thank you, Yale. Please get your copies. You can check out here. They will be happy to sign, right?
Yes,
Okay.
well.
Great.
5 copies.
Oh,